We now live in an age where almost any song, brand new or decades old, from any genre, can be heard at any time from a cell phone or computer with only a few screen taps. Technology strongly skipped a generation in music formats, going from specifically vinyl to cassettes to CDs, then digital, and now people that do collect physical mediums are seen as hipsters. Arguably the biggest reason why music evolved into this digital-only platform, for the most part, is because of music streaming services from Apple, Amazon, and eventually Spotify. These applications are not going anywhere anytime soon, and the music industry now relies on them, as well as young aspiring bands trying to get their name out there. All on an app most people have on their phone or computer. Technology has given us extreme convenience toward listening to and finding new music. That's a good thing. I mean, I don't think anyone wants to go back to their skip-proof CD player that drained a couple double A's after a playthrough. Now we can have access to any podcast, audiobook, or song by any band or artist whenever we want. It's great. But it's having a negative effect on the music industry in certain ways. And the question that many people have been asking, are streaming apps, specifically Spotify, destroying the music industry? I asked this question on Twitter along with providing a poll. It's fairly close in retrospect, and many of you had something to add to the conversation. Most of you brought up great points. Many articles and presentations with research have been done independently and by record labels themselves, pointing out that Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other services are not paying fairly in payouts when listeners play a song. To break this down a little, we have statistics showing how much a musician or band is paid per stream, depending on which service the song is played from. As of now, Tidal has one of the best payouts per stream at 0.013 cents per stream, with a minimum of the first 30 seconds of the song played. Apple Music and Amazon Music with Amazon Unlimited are virtually neck and neck in terms of payout, giving 0.0074 cents per stream. That's right, the higher payouts from the big names Apple and Amazon still give less than 1 cent per stream. Below Apple and Amazon is Spotify, who pays less than half of Apple and Amazon at roughly 0.0038 cents per stream, meaning that Spotify could literally double their streaming payouts overnight and it still would not give a full cent per stream. That is crazy. Spotify is arguably the most popular music streaming service both for the free and premium subscription. Even with the millions of premium users, the payouts are extremely poor from the service, and bands and artists make even less than the full payout. I'll explain that in a minute. Continuing after Spotify is Pandora, which is still around in 2020, believe it or not, and it pays 0.0013 cents per share. And then below that is YouTube, with YouTube Music, which will now be combined with Google Music at the end of 2020. The service itself is planned to pay more, however YouTube is undeniably the lowest, paying only 0.0007 of a cent per share. Keep in mind, there are many reasons why YouTube ad revenue is wildly different than Apple, Amazon, and Spotify, but regardless, YouTube is not viable unless you are a huge name. That was a lot of info and numbers all at once. To sum up, streaming services are making a ton of money and giving a fraction of it to the song being streamed, and it will not get better anytime soon. In 2020, Spotify CEO Daniel Ek, who is now valued at $4 billion, made a statement about why payouts are so low and how musicians can't live off streams. His response to the subject: some artists that used to do well in the past may not do well in this future landscape, where you can't record music once every 3 to 4 years and think that's going to be enough. I feel really that the ones that aren't doing well in streaming are predominantly people who want to release music the way it used to be released. The reason musicians want to release music the way it used to be is because musicians got paid fairly that way in the past. Back then, they only had to deal with a greedy label. Now, they deal with greedy labels, distribution, and Daniel Ek telling musicians that they need to churn out new music every week if you want to make a good living, regardless of the music's quality. The problem isn't I don't pay you well enough, you just don't work hard enough. While Spotify's CEO becomes more like that plant from Little Shop of Horrors telling artists to feed me, there is a significant issue with the payouts that isn't looked at. Those numbers I just showed previously are the payouts, but the revenue is still high. In fact, the money that Spotify and other streaming services make both from ad revenue and from premium accounts is great. So great that it's actually making billions in regular cycles. Where does that money go? According to TechDirt, and also verified by many other sources, after the streaming services pay out, the label gets the biggest share. While each contract for every band and artist may vary, the average amount kept per stream revenue is over 45% of the pie. Musicians and artists get roughly 6.8% of the stream after all it's said and done, sometimes more if self-written and self-produced and the artists and musicians own their own mastery tapes. The streaming services, mainly Spotify, have a lot of problems, but they're not all to blame why musicians aren't making ends meet. The labels and corporate side of the music industry are still as greedy as ever, and they know they have any band or singer that signs with them under their thumb. Depending on which contract you sign, you could be in deep trouble without being able to pay back album advances, and now with most labels demanding terms where they get a cut from touring and merchandise revenue, which 2020 has also completely halted, those bands and artists are in serious trouble of ever making a living. So you have CEOs saying it's musicians that need to make more music to see money, while streaming services and labels rake in the majority of the profits, and you have said musicians trying to make new music in the hopes that streaming revenue is enough to hook people's attention, while the money at the end of the day barely pays for groceries. That's where another problem comes in for payouts. Most streaming services only give a full payout if a song or track plays through the first 30 seconds, and considering how most people rely on the skip button in the first 10 seconds, streaming is only helping if listeners are patient enough. There's a great TED Talk that I will link to in the YouTube description and info card about how Spotify streams only give payouts if the first 30 seconds of a stream are played. Roughly 50% of all listeners hit the skip button in less than 10 seconds. As a result of this, big labels and musicians are making their music to have shorter tracks and to make the first 30 seconds hook you instantly. Big vocals, choruses, hooks, foul language, whatever works. Make it to 30 seconds, any means necessary. Music is changing because of that. There are several negatives with the advent of streaming, but there are also positives. Besides the obvious that any song you can think of is a few taps away on your phone, another huge advantage is that unknown and young musicians can put their music on this platform without additional help and get their name out there publicly, which has potential for massive discovery. A young college band with no support and that isn't able to tour has the ability to use the same platform that platinum-selling artists use. The chance to be discovered across the world due to listening algorithms is a massive benefit to every young rock star in training that bands decades ago couldn't dream of. Another positive thing that Spotify has indirectly helped combat, which does help musicians, is that streaming sites and apps like Spotify help combat piracy. Illegal downloading is not nearly as big of a problem as it was years ago because almost anyone with a computer or cell phone can easily find any music they want in seconds without having to download anything. Now, leaks are mostly sought after for new albums that haven't released yet, but once the album is available for public, most people understand what's the point of an illegal download when you can just stream it. This in turn has helped artists and bands make sure they get some recognition for their music being streamed and can be quantifiably checked and counted to go towards some type of payout. It goes back to that whole Napster debate with Lars Ulrich in the early 2000s and the many claims as to why Napster and free downloading would hurt musicians and the industry. Lars was right about a few things. Make whatever jokes you want about that statement, but yeah, he was right about some things with that entire pursuit against at-home downloading and never paying for music. Or at least he had the right base logic at what the problems would lead to. Technology would have evolved to something like this regardless of those complaints in the early 2000s or not. Music is just a bigger victim because of how the system is set to pay the streaming sites first, then the labels the most, then your favorite band will see a few tenths of a penny per stream. For the consumer, it's ideal. For the artist, it's an uphill climb. There are other positives and negatives I could list off, such as Spotify benefiting podcasters much more than musicians, and sharing playlists or favorite songs with friends is more exciting and instant now, but they just lead to points for the question, is Spotify and other streaming services destroying the music industry? My opinion? No. No, it's not. But it's changed the music industry. Music will still be made and produced either independently or under a label. Said payouts to musicians will be divided by respective parties as they have for decades. While bands and artists can rely on other great tools like Bandcamp, Patreon, and fan support outlets, music sales are still undeniably down and will never be what they were. The music industry has changed too much to go back to that. As for actual answers, if everyone canceled their Spotify premium subscription and moved to Apple or Amazon, would that help? Not as much as you would think. It would definitely help those payouts be better if you're going to listen to the same music anyway, but if anything, that could make Spotify payouts worse in the long run and make it harder for independent musicians to be found on Spotify. What Daniel Ek said about having musicians work non-stop and continuously putting out new music is garbage, where streaming services and labels take the vast majority of profit off of streaming, but Spotify itself is not destroying the music industry. The music industry was already broken to begin with. But instead of labels now trapping musicians long term, it's the method of hearing music digitally that is becoming a competitive vulture along with the record labels. And while music lovers have it easy, our favorite bands and artists are suffering. One suggestion in the short term is for every Spotify, Apple, and Amazon user to apply the 30-second rule. You want to make sure your musicians and bands are getting streams counted and paid? Give each song on your mixed playlist, and every time you click on something, 30 seconds. They get the credit for the stream and the full payout, and you might find a new song that you love that just might not have picked up in the first 30 seconds. Giving new music a chance for 30 seconds, which really is not asking much of your time or efforts, will have a dramatic effect overall. Until then, support your favorite bands and artists in other ways. If they have a Patreon, support that. If they have merch on their own website, buy it. Streaming's not going anywhere. And until organizations and applications like Spotify increase their payouts, our favorite bands and artists are gonna be hungry for a while. Have any thoughts on Spotify, streaming, and the music industry? Leave a comment and let everyone know. Big thanks to my patrons and a special thanks to Brandon Bairdfeld, Chris Doman, McKenna White, and Dom Smith. You can have a say in upcoming videos and see videos early by supporting Rocked on Patreon. Please click the link in the video description for more info. Please subscribe and ring the bell to get notified of upcoming videos. You can check out my concert photography on Instagram, and you can keep up to date with Rocked on Facebook and Twitter.